aka Joe Brat. So let's start with, where did you get your name from and why?
Joe Brat, aka Bratman, aka the Lone Wolf. I got the name Joe Brat because unlike most of the other Swedish rappers that came up, rappers in general at that time, I did not grow up in a high-rise council estate. I grew up in the Swedish equivalent of a Victorian house in Stockholm, so in the eyes of the others, I was basically a spoiled little shit. So I thought, instead of trying to pull a Vanilla Ice and put on this whole I was a street hustler, I was this and that, I thought, fuck it, I'll do an 8 Mile and instead just admit that I was a spoiled little brat. Hence the name Joey Brat. Joe's the nickname for my real name,
Do
Johannes.
you call yourself UK hip-hop or Swedish hip-hop?
I call myself Swedish hip-hop because that's where I'm born and raised. But I would say that I have done what no of the Swedish artists did before me. Added a distinctive UK flavor to it. For instance, I am now working with a UK producer named Keen Rich for my new mixtape, The Lone Wolf, which is gonna give an extra UK edge to it. And also I use a bit of UK urban slang, which is known as London multicultural.
What's the difference living here in the UK than Sweden?
I would say that Sweden, it's a bit different. It's much smaller, it's much quieter. Many would compare it to moving from a small town in the UK to moving to London. The people are a bit more narrow-minded. It's not quite as well integrated. People are a bit more like reserved and not as straightforward as London. And in a way I think it's sad because sometimes they're too stuck in their old ways of thinking, as this is how it used to be, this is how it should remain, while London is culturally a bit more straightforward. Biggest problem with London, besides Brexit, obvious, that's a problem for everyone in Europe really. Biggest problem I would say is the accommodation. But you do get used to it.
When did you know you had the talent to do hip-hop?
That's a bit of a tough one. I've been listening to hip-hop ever since I was like 12. It was mostly Swedish rap back then. And that was after my father, who is ironically a rock singer, did a song with a Swedish rapper, rap and rock collaboration. That was an anti-racist song. But for long I kind of doubted myself because there was a certain kind of person you had to be a rapper. The guy my dad collaborated with was from that background. High-rise council estate, foreign background, had a bit of a tough upbringing. Yeah, for very long that was the perception, and that made me think, no, that's not really gonna suit me. But then eventually it just became so deeply rooted in me, I said, fuck this, I'm gonna do this regardless of who I am. You're never wrong for spreading a positive message, which was my purpose with rap.
Why did you choose UK hip-hop instead of US hip-hop?
It's a bit of a tough one, but the UK is less competitive. It has its own swagger, and I'm glad you brought that up, because at the end of the day, the UK is a scene that I, long before I even lived here, saw a lot of potential in. They speak English, they have a style that is somewhat different from the US. They could have a scene as big and as influential as the scene is in France. And now that's kind of starting to happen, so I think now UK hip-hop is in a very, very good place. For instance, back when I lived in Sweden, they hated UK rap over there because it was just too grimy and too odd for them. Now you see Skepta and Stormzy and even Lady Leisure doing sold out shows over there. And I think that connection's beautiful, and I'm looking to strengthen that connection.
Going on to your mixtapes, talk to me about your first mixtape, Rich Not Arrogant. Why did you decide to make that mixtape?
I decided to make it because I finally wanted a project to showcase. And making that mixtape, I was going through a lot. Not only was I fairly new in this country, the UK, I also done a video that was intended for it that became a massive flop. Nobody really believed I could do this. I had people telling me, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. So I got pulled in a lot of different directions. And while the outcome of that tape, now that I look back at it, like, 6 years later, I kind of see it as it wasn't really me the way it's supposed to be. But I'm still glad I did it, because it finally put me on the map as a force to be reckoned with.
Okay, what problems did you have during the time of making Rich Not Arrogant?
Well, I had problems that a lot of people doubted what I was doing, because they thought, nah, the idea of a middle-class white boy from Sweden trying to make it in hip-hop, he's not a gangster rapper or hood rapper, but he's not a commercial pop rapper either. And they claimed you have to be one of the two. And then I thought to myself, what about the third category, which is conscious rap? You do know that exists as well, and that's what I'm doing pretty much, or at least is the closest thing I could see to what I'm doing. Some of the tracks I was mostly happy with, though they could have been a lot better if made today. But the tracks I was happy with was The Realness, which is a conscious sort of song, and another track called My Story, where I talk about moving from another country. That was kind of a big thing for me. Then I also put out the single What I Wanna. This was back around 2011. But here I am now with a mixtape that is somewhat reminiscent of Rich Not Arrogant, but it's something new as well. The Lone Wolf. Right?
Then a year later and a bit, you made August Underground, which was produced by CJ Beats Productions.
Yep, that's right. August Underground was in many ways a lot easier to make than Rich Not Arrogant, because I found that was the mixtape where I truly found myself as an artist. It was smoother, it was cooler, there was no enforced like street songs. It was more personal, it was more emotional. And I had largely cut out or didn't have the bad people around me that influenced Rich Not Arrogant. So I was a bit more in control of myself and just didn't care what anyone else thought. So I'd say that was a much easier one to make, because I felt it was more me. It was what Rich Not Arrogant should have been.
So the tracks that I liked personally from you know, was it August Underground, was Victim, Untouchable. You know, I thought like Victim was a great track. I really enjoyed listening to that. Untouchable, to me, this is a big song. I love it when a singer can come on a beat and bring next level vibes to it.
Oh yeah. That was my man Marvin on the hook. Very talented singer from Amsterdam, so we're both Euro trash. But no, he absolutely killed it, and I'm glad you liked it. Victim was a song where I wanted to address people who become a victim of bad habits and not really looked at as anything else. For instance, if you're an alcoholic, society are always going to view you as an alcoholic even 10 years after you've gone to rehab and you're no longer an alcoholic, because it's something very real that's happening in society.
I guess you took a little break and you came back with an EP in 2013 called Absolute Joey, produced by a French producer called
Corsai's Earth Music. That's right. Absolute Joey was, from the more emotionally charged August Underground, a bit of a return to the Rich Not Arrogant big beat sound. And I had Chara Love, had my man Starda, and Mass Destruction as the featured artists. It was more in your face, more hard hitting, mixture of old school and new school rap. And that's actually one of the songs playing in the background now, called Southside. So I'm from Southside, Stockholm. And yeah, I had lots of fun making that EP, and it marked a return to the old sound, but at the same time it was not exactly the same.
Before we move on to your next EP, what do you look for in a producer for your music wise?
I look at whether he has a heavy bass line in his beats, whether he has nice samples or nice synthesizers, and overall the beat has to be very, I shouldn't say advanced, but it has to be industry level quality, and it has to have something that really brings out emotion, that really brings out power. It could be emotional, it could be hard, it could be commercial, but it has to be something powerful, something that is in your face for the audience. Because when I pick beat, I look at it like back when I was just a fan, before I started rapping, what made me when I listened to the song, that the productions could matter a lot. Because I mean, you can be the worst ever lyricist, but you could have an album full of sick beats and I'm still gonna listen to you. You could be the best lyricist ever, but you could have some rubbish productions and I'm gonna fall asleep listening to your album because of that. So what I'm saying is, pick your instrumentals wisely, because they can matter a lot when you're making a mixtape or album.
So your second EP is called The Winter Soldier, which is produced by the same person who produced Absolute Joey.
Oh yeah, due to how hard Absolute Joey came out, I felt, no, let's do another banger with Corsair surf music. And that became The Winter Soldier, which was overall quite similar to Absolute Joey EP in structure. Had a very early 2000s vibe to it. Think of the 50 Cent, Eminem, Fabulous, that kind of wave. I was going for a bit of a nostalgia phase to the early 2000s during the time I made Winter Soldier. So he did have some hard-hitting tracks, very early 2000 style. Probably the track that most of you have heard from that I actually wrote before the Nicki Minaj track Anaconda came out. Videos on YouTube.
Anaconda, J-Lo for breakfast. Anaconda, Snake bring check me. Anaconda, money long like Anaconda. Propulsion high zone. Anaconda, J-Lo for breakfast. Anaconda, Snake bring check me.
And the title character of the video is seen right next to us. Zoom the camera over to the tank for a minute. Anaconda. Then he also had a political track, Resolution, which was criticizing failure to integrate the society. And then lastly you had the more emotionally charged track Downfall, which was a throwback to August Underground in many ways. Not by the same producer, but similar vibe.
Okay, Rapstar, that's more intro for the Winter Soldier.
That's right.
Again, really great track. At the end, where you got people going in on you, about you. Was that a real part of your life? Were people you know saying the stuff about you, or was it just for the music?
That was actually a real part of my life, because during both the time I started, mostly, especially the times when I lived back in Sweden, that was the 50 Cent, Eminem, Nelly era, where it was very, very tough if you weren't from America, and if you weren't black or Hispanic. No offense, but hip-hop from Europe wasn't getting no love back then unless you was living in France. And yeah, I've had people calling me sellout. I've had people saying all kinds of stuff. And the way I see it is, no matter what you do, people are always going to have something to say. So I choose it as a funny little skit at the end of the track, because it actually reflects. The track is a bit of a parody of how you are supposed to be if you're a big rapper in Sweden, and how it contradicts the way the big rappers in the UK are. I'll understand that myself, but because I've actually lived there, the scene over there is a bit different, but more on that later.
Do you think it's important to have fun with your music as well?
Most definitely. as Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, which plays a very big part in today's music distribution with iTunes and all that, he said if you're not having fun doing it, if you don't love or you're passionate about what you're doing, eventually you're gonna give up, because you're sitting there being forced to do something that you don't really enjoy or don't really stand for. So yes, I definitely think no matter what kind of music you do, that you have to enjoy what you're doing for the very best outcome.
Also, is it important to have such producing skills in these modern days?
That's a bit of a tough one. I guess it depends what sort of hip-hop you're doing. Because a lot of stuff that comes out today is really, really simple. You just put an 808 drum loop behind it and you have a song. But in order to get a hit that people are actually going to be talking about in 5, 10, even 15 or 20 years from now, yeah, I think having a somewhat powerful instrumental is actually important. Song that I think is going to be a banger in, let's say, 10 years from now is Skepta, Shutdown. I'm going to give a little shout out to the UK here. That beat is so instantly in your face that it's impossible to ignore it.
What is your new project? What is it going to be called, and when is it dropping?
The new project is called The Lone Wolf. It'll be a mixtape produced entirely by the UK producer Kin Rich. So it's going to have a bit more of a UK vibe than the previous ones, a bit more new school. If I was to compare it to any of my previous releases, as you can hear in the background here, it's slightly more similar to August Underground than any of the others. And just like August Underground, it's going to have a lot of humor to it, which that did have, and a few serious tracks as well. And I'm looking to drop this mixtape around June. And the title Lone Wolf is basically a self-empowerment title. It's like, I'm doing me, I don't need anybody else. And I think it's a good time in this day and age of self-empowerment and big egos to come out with something like that. But you're gonna get a bit of a mixture of old school and new school rap. You have a bit of trap, new school, you have a bit of East Coast, you have a bit of even the Dirty South, and even the kind of Drake Canadian vibe, and I'm gonna get a lot of criticism if I say this, but who knows, there may even be a grime influence track on there.
Are you thinking of getting into acting as well?
Yes, I am actually. I've only briefly talked to people about it, so I don't want to be giving anything away here. But funny enough, I actually used to make short films with a guy I went to school with back in Sweden before rap, which is actually where I got the whole cinematic storytelling and cinematic matching visuals with music from. Because on those short films, I was the one doing the whole music supervision and selecting the background music. Could be a rock song, could be a classical film music track. So yeah, I could definitely see myself doing that. And Sweden's killing it in Hollywood right now. Joel Kinnaman is playing Rick Flag in Suicide Squad, for flip's sake. Alicia Vikander just won an Oscar and playing Tomb Raider, so I think it's gonna be a good look for us. Present. Shoutouts to, first of all, the producers, Kin Rich, CJ Beats, Corsair Surf Music, and last but not least, DJ Isso for Rich Not Arrogant. Shoutouts to the artists that's featured on this. It'll be Mass Destruction, Starda, Chora Love, Mac J, Ill Sins, Skeptical One, Big Friff, Wings. Let's see, who else featured? I think that's all of them, to be honest. And of course Lilas Lafleur, the singer. And also Miss True, the singer. You can't forget the beautiful female voices. And of course the singer Marvin.